Hello, my name is Amy Hoskins, and I'm a visual artist, writer, and survivor creating with disabilities from my home studio in South Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you so much to Alien Buddha Press for publishing my chapbook, The Semblance of Equal Grace. It goes live July 17th, so stay tuned. If you visit my website, amyhoskins.com/writing, you will see publications and a live link there. The first two poems I'm going to read are in the chapbook. The third one is a story about our family farm that I've never performed. Thank you for listening. Spark, gentle tentacles, my fingers, minute and hour hands, can't keep up with the time. He leads a base that hates, a spark in the dark, my right eye has lost hope. Not cynicism, but resignation. In the face of war, there is a moment where peace is possible. In each day, finding the balance, finding our way. Looking for Superman. I am the orifice. Like driftwood, I fall into the water, float slowly with currents downstream. Can't differentiate dreams from memories, from reality. One day I leaned too hard on a wall in Machu Picchu, straining for sane places to be inside and out. I meditated, prayed, visualized landscapes soothing to my soul, my inner eyes. I imagined the stones warm in the sun, massive and grounded, sank into their warmth, leaned in hard. The next afternoon on the evening news, the reporter said several stones have fallen from Machu Picchu down into the deep canyons for the first time. Her costume jewelry beads lost their ability to hold it together, falling and bouncing apart in all directions. Eventually, like the smartphones, the batteries lost their spice, lithium from Congo, leaving everyone separate, bouncing all around, needing the juice of interconnection. Moments of reflection in the nightclub bathrooms. I'm drunk. It's fun. What am I doing here? Stickers and graffiti worthy of photography, blank pages on standby. Club 688 in the 80s in Atlanta was white walls with black Sharpie doodles, lines, numbers, and signs of the times. Wars have me speechless. Looking for Superman. The Antichrist is here. There is no clean cut to this complexity. The dissection is never complete, this search for peace. The forest, the jungle, ocean, they are mysterious to man, not woman, pulled monthly by the moon. He calls them untamed and tries to control nature. She responds with inexplicable tornadoes, storms of hot and cold fronts, fighting for the upper hand, without respect for God's creation, destroying what they want. No, without respect for God's creation, destroying what they want, no respect for man's creations. Why not wish for the elevation to heaven? You're squandering what's left with wild abandon. What is your spirituality made of anymore? How do you sleep at night despising the world so much? A dog barks at nothing to hear her voice echo back. You say, she's barking at injustice, barking at the void of the unknown. This is me surrendering, arms wide open with wings I do not have. Hit me. I'll do my best to cope. The farm. 1. I can only tell you what I recall as truth about the farm. In college, I would escape to it, secret journeys. I parked my blue Monte Carlo on the red dirt ridge, balancing my Nikon EM 35mm film camera on my chest. My father and his family on the McCormick side lived there since the Cherokee lost their land in the lottery, had to survive or perish on the withering trail of tears and winter. There was an ancient photograph of the McCormick family in the 1800s, huge gathering of people, mostly dressed in black, holding babies, standing proudly on the front porch, the upper balcony, delicate details of the wooden lace-like Victorian gingerbread. One of my older brothers, talented at mechanical drawing, penciled a version of the farmhouse from the old photograph, and Mama had it framed. So pristine was the drawing, so desolate the ruined farmhouse we knew. One year we were at an art event at Roselawn in Cartersville, Georgia, where we lived. One of my older sisters and I recognized the farmhouse and a beautiful painting in an artist's booth. We wanted to buy it and debated, but it was sold by the time we went back. We have the real farmhouse instead, we thought. Every time my daddy's family plowed the fields, they would find Cherokee arrowheads, pieces of clay pipe, pottery. I only found one arrowhead, made of white quartz. It popped up against the red clay soil of North Georgia. I gave it to you. I know you'll keep it safe. 2. We always knew, of course we knew, where the land had come from. It was surreal with ghosts, knowing the New Echota settlement was only a ways away from our home, and our home being near the Etowah Indian mounds. Now the Cherokee were all gone out west, except for the ones who escaped to North Carolina. The Cherokee were recognized as a sovereign nation, had their own printing press, alphabet for their language, yet they were treated like animals, seen as inferior people. Betrayal in their inner circle came due for revenge in the new Cherokee territory. That's all we knew of current. 3. Daddy grew up on the farm with my Grandma Jay and 2 great aunts until he went off to Georgia Tech, then off to World War II. He studied mechanical engineering for 3 years before the war, became a banker instead after World War II. All of his engineering training had become outdated due to improvements during the war. Married and had 5 of us Jacksons. When he was growing up, a red-haired, freckle-faced kid, Daddy would walk to the Stylesboro Academy for school. The one-room schoolhouse had been spared by Sherman's troops during the Civil War because, as it was told, it said, "In God we trust," over the schoolroom chalkboard, which it certainly still did. When I was growing up, they were still throwing massive Sproul family reunions one Saturday each July at the Stylesboro Academy. Enormous amounts of food, cakes, pies, iced tea, and Brunswick stew from a cauldron. Lined tables run end on end, piled high with potluck delicacies. Great Aunt Nell taught Daddy at Stylesboro Academy growing up. He used to vent about how hard she would hit him with a ruler if he did something wrong. Not only did she not spare him this, but often made him an example in front of the class. Daddy loved to tell the story about his pet chicken. He had trained it to ride the handles of his bicycle. He adored that chicken. One day he was devastated to watch Great Aunt Nell come out the screen door, grab his pet chicken, and wring its neck for supper. Even so, I imagine Daddy's childhood is somewhat idyllic, although his father was absent. I can see him playing in the fields, forest, and by the Etowah River, especially the old swimming hole. He got teased a lot for almost everything. He became a charmer, loving to crack a smile or a joke. Now I know the darker truths of his life. Now he's gone. 4. By the time I came along in 1964, the old 2-story farmhouse was being rented out. Daddy and I would go out there in his truck. I wasn't to interact with the renters or look them in the eye. He would try to collect the rent. Daddy would get so mad at them all the way home, sometimes even if they did pay the rent. The renters were so cold or mad, they started burning pieces of the barn and the house for firewood. For Daddy, that was the last straw. He boarded up the house for good. Before he boarded it up, though, we all took a look through it. It was missing doors and windows here and there, so vandalized. We would walk upstairs carefully, imagining when the family and Daddy had lived here long ago. I loved the smell of the huge pile of cotton seeds stored in the upper bedroom. Eventually, all the stairs inside and up to the front porch were so disintegrated it was too dangerous to enter. Vandals would come and tear open the walls looking for family treasures, but to no avail. It became a challenge between Daddy and the vandals, boarding, reboarding up the windows and doors. They would just keep breaking in. It seemed as if the very bones of the farmhouse screamed at this distress, while lush green vines juxtaposed against its aging, silvery wooden frame. 5. Great Aunt Ladybug said there used to be a chandelier in every room, but Mama said a lot of what Ladybug says isn't true. It was true that Ladybug's littlest brother was killed in a fire he started with matches. I had nightmares of this and would remember growing up not to play with matches. When we wandered through the farmhouse rooms, I would wonder that the little boy ghost didn't chase us, reminding us he existed. Great Uncle Bob went away, joined the merchant marines, was never seen again, except in brief, infrequent visits. Daddy said Uncle Bob predicted the Japanese were preparing for war because they were buying up all the scrap metal they could get. 6. The farm was 144 acres. Daddy hired someone to run the soybeans, cotton, or mix of crops they decided upon each year. What they made from the sale just barely paid property taxes on it each year. The Etowah River ran along the back of the farmhouse, as well as extensive railroad tracks. I was fascinated with both. Daddy would drive us out there, then we would all go exploring in our own separate ways. In the mid-70s, when I was in elementary school, Daddy would drive me out to the farm, sometimes on Sundays after church. On the way, we would listen to old country music on the truck radio. Once there, he would tell me to go off on my own into the woods. I learned so much about wild beings exploring the woods and train tracks. There was a swimming hole, a twisted rope with a knot at the base, hung from a huge tree over the Etowah River. I used to sit on some flat rocks, taking it all in, reflections, tadpoles, tiny fish, king snakes, watch out for water moccasins and rattlesnakes, just listening to the muddy river, to the wind and the lush oak trees above. Imagine who had sat here before. It was so calming. Then it was time to go. Daddy would call me hours later to head home. Leaving the farm, going out the back way, we would cross a tiny but pretty creek, often marred by the dumping of appliances and such. We would stop there on the little bridge. Daddy would smoke a cigarette and ask me questions. Usually I was distracted by the trash in the creek to the left and the big Bowen power plant to the right with its two tall, white, sensuously curved silos. Then we would go home among rolling green fields, forests, valleys, Georgia farmland. 7. Later, the swimming hole became a massive party zone for who Daddy said were white trash. But they were just people, too. They left huge piles of empty beer cans and trash behind after their bouts. Daddy confronted them first. They threatened to kill him. After that, Daddy always brought a gun with him when he visited the farm. We were told it was off limits. I was fascinated in college as a new photographer with capturing the beauty of the farm, my place by the river, the woods, and the lime sink, of which I'd only heard tell. Daddy had always warned that people could be quickly pulled down below the surface of the lime sink and to not try to find it. But find it I did. Crazy college student, fearless, young, As luck would have it, I ran out of film in the 35mm camera right before I found the lime sink in a throng of sinking trees and winding vines just yards in front of the old farmhouse in a tiny patch of woods. It had been there all along. The ground trembling beneath my feet, I stood there for a few minutes, trying to memorize the features of the lime sink. Palette of acid yellows, lime greens, huge thick vines dripping from surrounding trees, being sucked into luminescent watery spaces. There was no distinction between up or down, so densely grown were the vines. The lime sink was some kind of infinity pool of a different kind. As I stood there, hypnotized, I thought better of the whole thing. As the ground began to be unsteady under my feet, cursing that I had no film left, I backed away, then walked slowly back to my dark blue Monte Carlo as dusk was falling on the horizon. I went home to see my parents, who would remain unaware of these secret trips to the farm. At one time, we thought about building a house out on the farm, but remained indecisive until it was too late. 8. I graduated from college in 1987. The family came together for the ceremony. The next day, we all found out the old farmhouse had been burned down overnight. I remember my father repeating over and over, it had nothing to do with your graduation. Still, it struck me hard after a searing, burning feeling the day before as a mark in time, such a loss of a family heirloom of sorts, once you could see and touch, gone forever now. We still had my brother's pencil drawing, the ancient photo of the McCormick family, friends holding up babies, kids in pinafores cross-legged, squinting in the sun. We all went to the farm that surreal morning, sorting through the ashes, finding bits of charred old wood, some random spoons that weren't worth anything. The empty landscape where the farmhouse had always been overcame us all. Daddy sold the land almost immediately, as if a curse were off his back, in a way that makes sense to me. That whole time, somehow, that farmhouse, the farm, was cursed land because it had belonged to the Cherokee for so long before the land lottery was begun. Somehow none of that land was ever ours to keep. 9. I created 2 paintings in watercolor of the lime sink decades later. I'll never forget all the good memories of the railroad tracks, the Etowah River banks, the lime sink, the smell of drying cotton seeds in the upper right bedroom, the surreptitious visits I made there in college, red clay soil in my hands, that one white quartz arrowhead I gave to you for safekeeping. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned via amyhoskins.com/writing for the chapbook to go live. Have a blessed day.